Have you ever thought about buying some land? If you've dreamt about it but never looked into it, this video is your starting point. More and more people working in cubicles are daydreaming about owning land. No house, just land. These people want to do everything from homesteading to tiny home living. Whatever the dream is, there's some things you should know before you get too involved in the process. Most dreams are simple and include some rose-colored glasses. You buy your land, you build your house, you marry an LL Bean model, and you drink perfect cups of coffee on the deck of your log cabin overlooking a lake. The reality is very different for some people. They didn't know they weren't hooked up to the local sewage system, and they built their dream home on a floodplain that floods every 100 years. You look at your paperwork and you realize the last 100-year flood was 98 years ago. Before we get going, remember, this is for people that are just thinking about it, not seasoned professionals that have been in the business for 30 years. You're gonna listen to this and go, oh yeah, no kidding. That's common sense. Not to everyone. But all these things are things I learned when I bought property. And I've also become friends with the agent who helped me, and he explained that these are things that newcomers don't really know about until they're in the process. That being said, if you have any experience in this and would like to add to it, leave us a comment in the comment section below. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, know the history. Surprises in this department can be devastating. The last thing you want to deal with is an ancient graveyard that happens to have evidence of a Viking longhouse in Booger Hole, West Virginia, or an endangered species of head lice on your property that's legally protected. These are not things you want to deal with. To avoid these unwanted scenarios, it's important to take the time to have an environmental survey done to the land. Now, you'll hear this a lot, and a lot of the problems can be solved with that. But it's good to know what you're looking for, and it's good to know these questions to ask. True story about this one. There's a house right where I used to live. I lived in Redondo Beach, California. That is a protected tree. When they built that property there were things they had to sign to understand that they could never touch that tree. They could never trim it. The city had to trim it, all these things. But the builder and whoever bought the property had to sign on to this, so they did. Well, one day, like the city official guy, he was out looking at the sidewalk in front of my house. They were gonna do some work on it. While he's talking to me, he looks down the street and sees these tree trimmers hooking up to the tree, and they start cutting off limbs. He ran down there. I could hear him screaming at them, and I was probably 8 doors up. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I had heard there was a lot of fines handed out for that one. So make sure you have your environmental survey done. Number 9, zoning and deed restrictions. This is something you definitely want to pay attention to, especially if you plan on building something on the property and maybe you want to put something special there. You want to build a pool, build a separate house for your kids, one of those barn type things where you can park your motorhome in it. If there's anything like that, make sure you find out if it is doable. Know the restrictions. There was a professional skateboarder, I forget his name now, this back in the late 90s. He had bought some property in Laguna Hills, California, and he wanted to build like a little skate park on his property. It was a good sized piece of property. They wouldn't let him. It wasn't going to be open to the public, it was just for him, but he couldn't do it. Because even though it didn't have water in it, they considered it a swimming pool. He eventually sold the property and moved someplace else. But keep in mind, when you get all this paperwork and all these contracts, not all zoning and restrictions will be listed on the first page of your sales contract or deed. You gotta dig and you gotta know what you're looking for. This is another one that'll be brought up again, but always work with an agent. That's at least my suggestion. If you're a professional at this and you can do it yourself, fine. If you don't know, like the people that this video is directed towards, make sure you don't try and do it on your own. And make sure you ask the questions to your agent or have a real estate attorney go over your paperwork for you. Go over the contract. That's what he's there for. Pay for that. You don't want to find out you're not hooked up to the municipal sewage and you can't put in a septic tank. Find out you got to pay $30,000 to get hooked up to the municipal sewage. Number 8, mineral and logging rights. When you're looking to buy land, be careful about mineral and logging rights. Imagine waking up to the sound of chainsaws because somebody else has the right to chop down the trees on your land. A lot of first-time buyers don't realize that these rights can be owned by someone else, even on land that they want to buy. So it's super important to check your deed and sales contract thoroughly to make sure nobody else has the rights to do stuff to your land. Now, again, a survey, your agent, or a lawyer, if you get one, should be able to tell you this, or literally should tell you this stuff. This is common sense to someone in the real estate market, but if this is just something you're thinking about, I'm just telling you, it's something you need to know about. Number 7, potential boundary disputes. This is a big one. You move into an area, you think you know where the lot lines are. Maybe there's an old building on your property or a tree you want removed that's just like old and sick and you want to tear it down. Then come to find out you didn't know where the lot line was, and that's actually your neighbor's tree. And that old barn that needs to be taken down, you find out that's actually half on your land and half on their land, and that's where your next door neighbor's family got started because his grandfather was conceived in that barn. To avoid all this, a simple discussion with neighbor can result in a written agreement that can help you avoid any future boundary problems. Might be a situation where that old rundown barn is something they've wanted to get rid of for a long time. They just didn't have the money to get it torn down. You do. So you get an agreement, building's gone. But a good land survey should be able to fix all this, and it's also good to have one because the sellers may come with a survey that's maybe a couple years old. Well, since then, maybe the road got expanded out in front of your property and your 20 acres is now 18 acres. Get your own survey. Number 6, depth and dirt composition. This one is more important than you might think, especially with all these hippies that want to live off the land these days. When you're looking for land, just make sure you know about the dirt. Because if you're planning to start a garden, want to live off the land, you'll need some good dark soil that's rich in carbon to get those plants going. You gotta know how deep the soil is too. If it's too shallow, it'll drain fast when it rains a lot. You also gotta know where the bedrock is in case you plan on putting a wine cellar in or a basement. Maybe you're a prepper and want to start a bomb shelter. The type of soil you have is crucial for your lawn, your trees, and if you're a serial killer and you need someplace to stash bodies, you want to make sure it's good soil for that. Number 5, liens and judgments. So if you find a deal on some land that seems too good to be true, watch out. It probably is too good to be true because they owe some money on it. There might be hidden issues like liens or debts tied to the property. When you're buying the land, you definitely want to check to make sure it's free of these headaches. Just because someone's selling doesn't mean they cleared up the mortgage or other debts. To dodge these problems, it's smart to get a lawyer and title insurance. They'll help make sure you're getting a clean deal, no extra headaches, and no surprises. Now, just about any decent agent, or if you do have a lawyer go over your contract, is going to tell you about these things. So it's kind of basic for them. Just make sure. CYOA. Number 4, property access. When it comes to access to your new plot of land, a whole bunch of different problems can pop up. Do you share a private road with 3 other properties? Do you actually have legal access to your property? Do you have to cross county, city, or state land to get to your property? This is another one where you got to get a lawyer or a real estate expert to check it out and make sure you actually have legal access to your property. Number 3, go visit. Now, a lot of people these days want to just buy land that they find on the internet for some reason. My friend Jerry says he's surprised how many people are just willing to put down money on something they've only seen pictures of on the internet. His suggestion is always go to the place first, walk the property, no matter what. Now, that does seem foreign to a lot of people, and to me it doesn't make sense either. I would definitely go there and walk the property before I bought anything. I wouldn't even give it serious thought until I walk the property. You never know what's on that property. Jerry also suggested you walk it during rain or bad weather at least once, so you can see how the drainage is. How's the water reacting to the land? Are you gonna have giant ponds pop up for 3 months a year? Just pictures on the internet are great to get you interested, but anyone helping you buy property will tell you go walk the property. Number 2, work with an agent. Yes, definitely work with an agent. I've explained all these different things and they all kind of go back to make sure you talk to some professionals. An agent is necessary. I'm sure a lot of you can just buy land on your own, and I'm sure occasionally it does work out. But when it doesn't work out, it's a nightmare. Real estate agents help you navigate the finer details like negotiations, due diligence, and closing the deal. I would also suggest finding an agent that deals with a lot of land, not just houses. Make sure they've dealt with a lot of just plain properties. That being said, don't rely on your agent 100%. Do your own research too. That's kind of what this video is about. Just give you some ideas of questions you should ask and things you should know about before you get into this. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about buying a home or just getting some property, there's a link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, have your finances in order. Buying land is a lot different than buying a house. House is kind of straightforward. Have your down payment in order, make sure the property's worth it, have decent credit, the bank's probably going to loan you some money. When it comes to real estate, banks really aren't that keen on loaning money for undeveloped land, at least to individuals. I'm sure if you're a developer that has plans of building, 50 units on a property, they'll probably have an easier time of getting money. As an individual, buying land, it can be difficult. That's why most land purchases are done in cash. Proof of funds is very important when making a cash offer. It helps the seller feel a little bit better about the purchase and you buying the property. Sort of like a mortgage pre-approval does when you're buying a house. And normally they like to see that you have the cash on hand, not it's all tied up in investments and you got to cash things out. They want to see it up front. That is usually the big killer to everyone's dream about buying land, is banks don't like to lend money for it.